Hey everybody, it's Rachel. Welcome back to the channel. So, do you ever feel like the world is just negative or rigged against you? Like trusting people is a losing game and optimism is for idiots? I get it. I've been there. Honestly, some days I feel like I still live there, with my cynicism unpacked and refusing to leave like a squatter. But what if cynicism isn't really you? Believe it or not, it's not actually part of your DNA or an unchangeable part of your personality. It's something we learn. And if it's learned, that means, at least in theory, that it can be unlearned. And that's the uncomfortable truth we're digging into today. Now, I'll admit up front that I have a lot of trust issues, not just because of adulthood and politics and all the ways life has taught me to be cautious, but because of the everyday stuff that just piles on over the years. Plus, as I've said before, I'm a Scorpio. Cynicism and distrust are part of my nature, if you believe that kind of thing. After a while, you stop wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt. You start thinking, it's better to expect the trick than to fall for it again. And honestly, that's the seed of cynicism right there. So let's define it in a down-to-earth way. Cynicism, at its core, is the belief that people can't really be trusted, that behind every promise, good deed, or big smile, there's probably a hidden motive waiting to show itself. It's not just doubt, it's living like there's always a catch. It's basically walking through life with one eyebrow permanently raised, convinced that if something looks good, it's probably a scam. It's not curiosity. It's not healthy skepticism. It's preemptive disappointment. A way of saying, if I assume people will let me down, I can't be surprised when they do. That is where we're going today, because cynicism feels smart. It feels like armor and safety. But what if it's not? What if it's more of a cage? One we're all living in together. We are, whether we like it or not, living in a cynicism epidemic. It's not just you, it's not just me, it's not even your cranky, conspiracy-loving relative at every family gathering. Cynicism is everywhere. And it makes sense, right? Just open your phone. One endless scroll of bad news after another. Climate collapse, corruption, leaders you wouldn't trust to run a lemonade stand, let alone a country. And let's be real, half of them couldn't even be trusted to make the lemonade. We are bombarded with reasons to doubt, to distrust, to assume the worst. And information overload just feeds this. We have more access to stories of disaster, manipulation, and betrayal than any generation in history. And that exposure rewires us. The brain thinks it's protecting us by assuming bad intent until proven otherwise. But cynicism isn't just a reaction to the news. It's contagious. It seeps into conversations at work, in friendships with total strangers. It becomes the filter we see everything through. Cynicism frequently gets mistaken for wisdom. You know the scene. Someone offers a hopeful idea, and there's always that one person who shoots it down with a smirk. They sound clever, everybody chuckles, but let's be honest, being negative doesn't make you wise. It's not intelligence. It's kind of lazy, as a matter of fact. Anybody can swing a wrecking ball. It takes guts to create or build. So, if cynicism feels this widespread, it's worth asking, how does it creep in? It doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It builds up. For me, it started small. Older siblings being older siblings, getting picked on in grade school. I was awkward and kind of a nerd who never quite fit into one group. Always just different enough to stand out. And as a kid, I was probably pretty gullible. And when you fall for stuff enough, you start to learn from it. Then adulthood piles on. Maybe you trust somebody who betrayed you. Maybe you give your all to a job and they treated you like you're disposable. Maybe you believed in a cause or a leader and they let you down. One letdown on top of another until cynicism sets in and you stop expecting better altogether. Psychologists even have a term for it, disappointment stacking. Over time, your brain starts connecting the dots. Don't get fooled again. Better to expect disappointment and be pleasantly surprised if you don't get it. Okay, Cue the Who here. Won't get fooled again. That is cynicism in a nutshell, isn't it? The desperate hope that the next time won't be the last. Only instead of a rock anthem blasting through your speakers, it's your nervous system running that chorus on repeat. Don't trust, don't risk, don't hope. Nietzsche once said that cynicism is the only form in which base souls approach honesty. Translation, at least how I read it, it's honesty that's been warped by bitterness. And society doesn't exactly discourage this. Media thrives on outrage and distrust. Headlines are written to trigger suspicion and piss you off. And it's not just news, it's here on YouTube too. How many times have you clicked on some outrageous thumbnail only to watch the video and think, well, that didn't match at all? The constant bait and switch trains us to expect disappointment. And when movies and TVs constantly portray cynical, sarcastic characters as the cool or the funny ones, we absorb that too. With all that disappointment and reinforcement, cynicism can feel inevitable. But inevitable doesn't mean harmless. Here's where a little philosophy might help. The ancient cynics, capital C cynics, weren't about distrust at all, actually. Diogenes, the most famous one, lived in a giant ceramic jar and rejected social conventions because he thought society was corrupt. Okay, that part tracks. But modern cynicism, that's more like bitterness, suspicion, sarcasm as a worldview. Somewhere along the way, cynicism stopped being about rejecting false values and started to be about rejecting hope. So, what's the big deal, Isn't cynicism just being realistic? Well, no, not really. Being too cynical actually costs us. On a personal level, it damages our mental health. Cynical thinking keeps the body in stress mode, high cortisol, low resistance. It makes us prone to anxiety, burnout, even physical illness. Relationships suffer too. If you assume everybody has bad intentions, you stop letting people get close. You treat people with suspicion, and guess what? They respond with defensiveness. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not in every situation, of course. Some people really are just assholes. Oscar Wilde nailed it when he said, "A cynic is a man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing." Cynicism tricks us into thinking we're clever, while it quietly steals our joy, connection, and meaning. It also blinds us to opportunities. If you think everything is rigged, you don't try, you stagnate. And on a bigger scale, cynicism erodes community. If everybody assumes people can't be trusted, then cooperation dies. Progress stalls. Cynicism doesn't build, it corrodes. The irony, it masks as wisdom, but in practice, it's closer to despair. Now, let's do a quick gut check here. Do you think cynicism has protected you more in life or held you back more? Just curious. The good news is cynicism doesn't have to be permanent. Like I said, because it's learned, it can be unlearned. The first step, catch your inner cynic in the act. Notice that automatic, yeah, right, when somebody says something hopeful. Ask yourself, am I being critical or am I just being cynical? Step 2, reframe. Instead of, that'll never work, try, okay, how could it work? Same critical eye, less corrosive. Step 3, and here it is again, filter your inputs. If your media diet is nothing but outrage and disaster, of course your worldview is going to tilt cynical. Try a digital detox, or at least balance it out with things that feed curiosity instead of suspicion. Step 4, practice empathy. This one is tricky if you're cynical. I've always been an empathetic person, but honestly, I think my empathy actually made me more cynical. My brain was constantly at odds with itself. But small shifts help. Instead of assuming every little thing is an attack, start smaller. Maybe the cashier isn't rude. Maybe they're just exhausted. And your coworker, they might not be sabotaging you. Sometimes people are just distracted, stressed, or terrible at calendars. Now, that doesn't mean you excuse bad patterns or let people walk all over you. It just means you don't drive yourself absolutely nuts by assuming the worst every single time. Sometimes choosing the less dramatic explanation is the thing that saves your sanity. It retrains the brain to see possibility instead of just assuming that that person sucks. Step 5, look for proof of good. Cynicism thrives on confirmation bias. If you only look for bad intent, you're going to find it. So deliberately look for the opposite. Try to keep track of daily moments where people actually defy your low expectations. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Cynicism says, "The world is corrupt, so don't bother." Stoicism says, "The world is messy, but you choose your response." That's a whole different kind of power. Okay, side note here. If you're still with me and not completely cynical about this video by now, do me a favor and hit the like button. It helps out more than you know. Okay, now, once we loosen cynicism's grip, what is on the other side? Does this mean we should all start trusting blindly, handing over our wallets to strangers? Of course not. That's naive and pretty stupid. The antidote to cynicism isn't blind optimism. It's healthy skepticism. Skepticism asks questions. It looks for evidence. Cynicism, on the other hand, assumes the answer before the question is even asked. It slams the door shut before possibility even walks in the room. Think about it. What would life be like if you swapped a little cynicism for curiosity? If instead of assuming the worst, you said, let's just see what happens. For me, it took something as big as a second cancer diagnosis for me to finally say, I cannot be like this anymore. That was my line in the sand. I couldn't afford to let cynicism take up any more of my life. But you don't need a health scare to get there. Maybe it's as simple as asking yourself, what would my life be like if I didn't carry all of this around all the time? I'm not saying it's easy. Trust is hard. Believe me, I get it. Especially in a world that feels like it doesn't deserve it a lot of the time. And to be clear, I don't mean trusting implicitly. I am not telling you to hand your bank password to a stranger or believe every word that comes out of a compulsive liar's mouth. What I mean is trust, as in letting people in, giving them a chance, not assuming the worst by default. It's measured, not blind. Maybe the point isn't whether the world deserves our trust. Maybe it's about who we become when we refuse to let cynicism have the last word. Because cynicism feels safe, but it also keeps us small. And unlearning it might just be one of the bravest, most freeing things we ever do. So what do you think? Can we unlearn cynicism, or is it too ingrained? Should we unlearn it? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. As always, take care of you, and I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.